y'all. Welcome to another episode of the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert. Today's guest is a fascinating blend between driven entrepreneur and crazy talented glass-blowing artist. Say that 3 times real fast. We are going to fire up all that and more with my guest, Jackson Schwartz. Did you see how I used the fire up there with the whole kiln reference? Yeah, you like that? Yeah, good. All right. Well, I am clearly on a roll today, so I'm going to try and match my enthusiasm with yours and also make sure that everyone gets to know who you are. Jackson, we have known each other for a handful of years back when I used to be able to walk up the street from iSpace and come see you at your studio and grab a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that space, man. It was so nice to get my feet back in there after this pandemic kind of has been wearing off a little bit, and come and see the Holden Room. And we're going to talk about all the stuff that you have going on in your building. But it's been great to finally get back together in person and things like that.
Yeah, we love seeing people again. It's amazing.
Yeah. And it's been fun to have some of our Coalition 9 sessions in your space because you've got that nice big meeting space. And so you've been gracious enough to let us use that for some of our sessions. But they come in you've got a bunch of doors that go into your space and they're going in the wrong doors and coming in through your manufacturing facility. And they're seeing guys blowing glass, which is insane. I'm sure people's heads are spinning.
Yeah, it's like Willy Wonka's little chocolate factory over here. You just don't know what you're going to get.
It is minus the Oompa Loompas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have any of those. No.
No. Well, you got something to strive for anyway.
Yep.
All right, man. So we're going to dig into your story. So I love the way that you explained to me your upbringing, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but you explained it as a Tom Sawyer upbringing. Explain to me in your words what that means.
I grew up in the countryside and in Wisconsin, and my parents were very much just like, get outside.
Yeah.
That was kind of the memo.
Yeah.
Go explore and go just experience sort of what the outdoors and what nature has to offer. And they were just like, go be curious, and they kind of let us loose. I mean, they were just trusted that we couldn't get in that much trouble. And, we'd build forts and sled and fish and do all kinds of fun stuff. So that was kind of it. It was like no kind of video games, none of that stuff. It was just get outside and go be creative and go kind of imagine.
Yeah.
Go play.
So you have 2 sisters, you're bookended by sisters. Were they outdoorsy and stuff like that too? Or were you a loner?
No, they definitely were. I don't think to the extent that I probably am, but they both really loved, being outside and playing. So we definitely spent a lot of time together, doing stuff for sure.
Yeah. So you, I asked you, like, when did you kind of the switch flip for you of when you understood the power of independence and the power of, I don't know if I'm going to say entrepreneurship at 16, but you said at age 16 is when you really started to figure out, like, you can create your own destiny. You can create your own independence. Talk to me a little bit about what was going on in your brain at that time.
Yeah, I just, I've always been really curious individual. And when you're really curious, you constantly want to find the boundaries of things, right? You're kind of like, what's that edge, right? How far can I push this? Sometimes you push stuff too far. You got to back up a little bit. So I think even as a teenager, it was like, okay, how do I take this a little bit further, right? And so, I turned 16. I think it was maybe 5 days after my 16th birthday. I got my driver's license, got a car, like was going. And so it was constantly like, okay, we could drive, a half an hour away for this adventure. Then we could drive an hour away for this adventure. Then we could drive 4 hours away, so it kind of started with just like, our immediate sort of environment and how can we explore that and how can you push that? So, when I was 16, it was like, okay, if I get a job, I start working, I can start, doing more things, having more adventure. And so that was kind of, for me, that was really the start of it. It was just like, oh, if I work and I can make a little bit of money, then I can go have an adventure. It was like as simple as that. It was very rudimentary.
Yeah. So then I found it interesting that you chose to go to Wisconsin River Falls for college your last 2 years of high school.
Yep.
How'd that come about?
I think again, I would always try to, push the limits or find the boundaries. So my mom was actually a teacher at the high school, and my parents were really into education. My dad's an engineer. And so they always push education. And there was a program that had started by the government, the state government, that your education dollars could be used towards college tuition. And if you lived within, I don't know, it was a half an hour or something of a university at that time, you could apply to the university and get in, and then take classes there. So I was like, oh, this is great. I want to go do this. So I applied, and there was only a couple students. I think there was maybe 2 or 3 students that did it at the time. It wasn't very well known about. And so I applied, got in, and then I would take all but one credit at the university, and then I'd take 1 class per quarter or whatever at the high school. It was just great. It was just amazing. It was a great experience for me. I think I really needed a different type of stimulation, and that definitely fit the bill then. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
Were you a good student?
It kind of depended on the class, I think.
Yeah, me too.
I think like a lot of people that are entrepreneurial, you sort of put your energy where you're excited, right? And then you have a really hard time putting your energy anywhere else. So wherever you got that feedback loop going where it gave you energy, that's where then you would channel a lot more of your energy. And so it sort of gets uneven. I think where, I have a lot of colleagues and friends where they can sort of, be way more balanced in their approach. I've never been like that. It's always been like I'm jumping off the diving board head first, or I'm like sitting in the lawn chair. It's one or the other, So So I think in the areas that I really was passionate about, like I was really passionate about science, super passionate about sort of, philosophy and, so culture. Those things were really stimulating to me, and art. I loved making things. I loved art. So.
And then you put a couple years of college in during high school. What'd you do after high school?
Well, when I was doing the 2 years in high school of college coursework, I worked at a pizza restaurant at night as a delivery driver and cook. And one of the other delivery drivers there was in the glass program. And I had seen a YouTube video of glass blowing and was like, that is the craziest stuff ever. So I knew that I really wanted to try it. And there was a small artist studio, maybe about 10 miles out of River Falls, that had an open house. And so I went there first to let them know that I was going to be their free assistant, as a 16-year-old. And they were not interested in that. It was a hard no. And so my plan was foiled. And so I'm sitting here thinking, okay, how do I get into this? I knew the university had a program. And so anyway, this other delivery driver was asking me what I was doing one Friday night. And I said, well, I'm gonna get off work and I'm gonna be done, like I'm probably going to bed because I'm 16. And I asked him what he was doing. He said, well, I'm going over to the glass blowing studio. I'm in the class there. That's my major. And I was like, are you kidding me? And so I would sneak in there with him at night and go in there and help him, like assist him or whatever. And then he'd let me make some things. And so that's how I kind of got into that. And so then when I was taking this coursework, I actually started blowing glass then in high school, because then I got into the university program. And I hounded the professor. I called him at his house like every week, basically just stalked him. And he said no so many times. I mean, he said no to me every week for months. And then I asked him if I could show up the first day to the class, and he said no. I said, well, I'm going to take this class at some point in the future, so that way I'll know what's going to happen, like what the class is about. And so I showed up the first day, and 2 people ended up not showing up for the class. And so if you show up the first day and somebody that doesn't, they can give you one of the seats in the class. So that happened. And I just remember him sighing and rolling his eyes, like signing my card. He put me in the class. He's just like, here we go. This kid is going to be a handful.
Yeah.
And so once I graduated, so anyway, we became close friends actually, and he was in his 60s at the time. And So then after I graduated from high school, I stayed in River Falls for 1 year. And then he really recommended that I go, try some new things and, glass related. So I ended up moving to Madison, Wisconsin, went to school there for 1 semester. And I did a workshop in Pittsburgh. This visiting artist from Australia came, and he told me to move to Australia. And so I did.
Which is insane. That you just breezed through that like it was like a blip on the screen, but I have to imagine that was such a well, now after I know that how you're shaking people down for internships and stuff like that, it probably was a little bit of a like, okay, yep, I got to do that, because if that's what I got to do, that's what I got to do. Right?
Yeah, it was. It was actually first like so my first reaction was like, that is crazy. No way I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And that lasted for about a day, and then it was like, I got to do this, it's like within 24 hours, it's like, this would be the best thing I could do. And so, my parents were super supportive of me going down this road. And they're like, from sort of day one of starting into glass, they were like, 2 things you got to know. You're going to have to figure it out. It's going to be really hard, but you have to figure it out. And 2, you have to be the best. And then not in the best in the sense of like some, sort of unhealthy message, but like you have to figure out where are the best people at this, like where are the best people who do this, and you have to be around them, because then you'll see what it means to be sort of at this caliber or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I had visited some private art schools in the US, and it was just crazy expensive for the tuition plus living costs, everything. And so I knew from this message that I was going to have to figure it out. And so I just knew like this wasn't going to work for me. And then when the Australia opportunity came up, it was like, well, I kind of did a fair amount of research, and the best artists in the world went there as visiting artists. They had some of their alumni were just incredible. I mean, they had numbers from all over the world. So a really high number of international students. And the tuition was about 20% of what it would be going to a private art school in the US. So it was like, okay, this all adds up. Like I'm moving, I'm doing it.
So when you went, you made the decision to go to Australia. When you were embarking on that journey to go to Australia, what did you say in your head of how long you were going to stay there?
Well, I knew that I was going to stay there for the duration of the program, which was, it was a 4-year program, okay. 4 to 5 year program. And so I was committing to that. And then from there, I didn't really know after that, it was kind of like, okay, I'm committing to this. I'm going to take this one step at a time. And that's really as far out as I looked at the time. I didn't have a plan at that point. It was like, I didn't know how this was all going to work. I didn't really care. It was like, I'm going to make it work, kind of 1 week, 1 month, 1 year at a time. And so, I was 18 or 19 at the time, and I just wanted to be the best glass blower in the world. I mean, that was my goal, like, wow. Yeah. And so, and that goal definitely evolved. But that's all I was hyper focused on that. I was just like, I just want to be really amazing at this craft. That's all I care about.
So did you spend the lion's share of your time in Australia hyper focused on being the best glass blower in the world, or did you mix it in with some other fun shenanigans and all the other stuff that happens when people go abroad?
Yeah, I mean, there was plenty of other adventure, right? And what's really interesting, and coming, growing up in the Midwest, Midwest is not a very transient place, right? We have a deeply rooted community here, and a lot of, sort of generation after generation of families that tend to set up life here, which is great. It offers a lot of really unique things about this region, which I very much appreciate. Certain things. There's also some drawbacks as well. But when I moved to Australia, like you're the exotic person because you're not from there, and you're thinking, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from like farmland and woods, right? And it's like everybody's super fascinated, and they think there's bears and deer everywhere, which is partially true. And they, and they have all these conceptions about America that were really fun to explore. But I did a lot of traveling. I traveled all over the country. We'd rent camper vans, are really big there. So they'd have these there's companies that would fix up these old like plumbing vans. And that was the cheapest way to travel because you could sleep in the thing at a little kitchenette. So we'd do that and drive all over. It was great. Kind of went all over the country on, 2 to 3 week trips at a time.
When did you make the decision? So after your program was done, did you make the decision to come back to the US and come back to our region, or did you stay for a little bit?
Yeah, I kind of I bounced back and forth a little bit. So I moved back here. My older sister was getting married, and so I moved back here. That was the summer of 2008. So I don't know if you heard, but there's a financial collapse that happened right then.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Good
know,
time.
yeah. Well, and you're 22. It's like I didn't even know what a financial collapse meant, right? I went to art
Right.
school, like I'm not saying that I was like deliberately naive, but I just didn't care. It was like I knew how to like make sure I had enough money to get from A to B, and that was kind of all I cared about. And so, entering sort of a more professional reality, like there wasn't really a job for me, and there wouldn't have been even without a financial collapse. So it's like this is really weird. Everybody's freaking out about this. This is a big deal, And then I kind of like started to understand what it meant, but it was pretty challenging. And so I had several different kind of opportunities for teaching gigs. Like that was something I was sort of did along the way for glass blowing and in art programs. And so I ended up back here for about 6 months, was teaching then at River Falls. And then I ended up going back to Australia and did taught some workshops there. And then I sort of bounced around to several different cities, just traveling, looking to see what was sort of the right place for me to set up shop. I knew that I was like, again, that back to that, jumping off the diving board, both feet in. I knew wherever I was going to commit to, like there was a couple year window where it was going to be kind of like, where am I really going to cement the next step in the journey here? And I wanted to make sure it was the right place. And so I visited other cities, looked up kind of cost of living, barriers to entry, like how, if I want to start a studio, all that kind of stuff. And Minneapolis, I was set up really well. I had family here. There was a small nonprofit that offered studio access. There really wasn't much of a glass scene here, which was, both a opportunity and a kind of a drawback too. But I saw, there's a lot of potential. And so by 2009, I was kind of like, okay, I'm here. This is it. A year and a half later, I was like, we're going to do this in Minneapolis, right?
And your industry is interesting, as we were talking about this in our prep call, was that you sold glass under your name, and Hennepin made wasn't a thing for a while because that's just not that world. So you were selling it as almost like and you did, I think, maybe I used the word starving artist, but you were kind of in that mode, right? Like you were just creating and trying to make a living.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really understand what business was, right? Like, I mean, I didn't really have an interest in it, honestly. Like, I didn't know that I was doing it. Like, I was in business, like
Right.
if somebody would ask me, "Oh, you have a business?" I would have said, "Well, no, I like make glass and I sell it." But at the end of the day, it is a business. And so, like, yeah, it was just a very different. I did it kind of, I would say I did it out of necessity. It would not have been my chosen path for making and selling objects or artwork or anything like that, right? And I consider probably a lot more of what we did was create really beautiful sort of limited edition products or one of a kind products versus what I would consider an artwork. But yeah, it was a very different concept of what your identity was, how you operate, and essentially how you have a business, even if you don't know that you are running one. It's very different than building a brand or building an organization.
Yeah. When did you decide that I don't know if needed is the right word, or desired to create a brand and start to scale a business from being, selling out of your van to basically, right? Or a nonprofit studio, right?
Yeah, no, we were selling out of the van. That is true.
Okay. Yeah. That was merely a picture I had in my brain.
Oh, we had a minivan. Yep. We bought it for like $1,800.
I love it.
And it was from like, this Russian family that I'm pretty sure they were dealing like on the black market, like or something. We thought it was bizarre. I don't even know if that was a real title or whatever, but yeah, we sold out of a van. And then, the lifestyle and quality of life thing is, the quality of life is really important to me. And, driving a car all over the country with packed full of glass, and you're setting it up outside, and every weekend you're on the road, and then you're making stuff during the week, and it was just like, this is just not good for sort of the human soul. And I was teaching at the time at River Falls back in the program I started in, and I had all these talented students that I had just experienced this amazing amount of opportunity in Australia. They had built a large nonprofit, a $12 million glass center, which I was a part of, helping
Wow.
get off the ground. I worked for a lot of other artists. I had plenty of ways to, leverage my skills to create income for myself. And then I was meeting all these students that just, were same age as me, and they just didn't have any opportunities in the thing they were really passionate about. And so it was kind of a combination of seeing the talent, seeing the need, and then also, really wanting to establish something that was more consistent for both myself and then the people that I was working with. I'd hire them as just assistants and stuff like that. And I was like, I really, there's something here. So
Yeah.
that's kind of when we were like, okay, we got to get something going.
And I think you're kind of hiding the big reason, which is the why, right? And what I love is your why at the time was your pure desire to keep the glass community going, because people in just, if our listeners are thinking about this in their general life, I don't think anybody knows a glass blower. I know one. Well, and I've met a few of yours, right?
Yeah.
But like, that is that was a big reason why you decided to keep pushing this forward and create a business and then get Hennepin made off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, so again, I didn't know what a business was, and when we were starting this, the business was really the tool that could service some of the other needs. And to me, the needs were really the need to create a community. In Australia, I had this amazing glass community that ranged from, sort of entry-level student type people all the way up to world famous artists and everything in between. Mm-hmm. And so I think the need that I saw, or that I actually had, was feeling the sense of building, right? Of transformation. Okay, we're going to take something that doesn't exist. We're going to create it, and we're going to do it together. So really the sense of bringing people together, connecting one another, having a shared goal, shared vision. And then it was like, oh, business is the tool that can do that, or the mechanism, right, that we can operate under, that actually empowers us to do that. There's some set rules and guidelines, and as long as we follow those and we're successful based on these metrics with the business part, we can do all this other stuff that is actually what we care about. And so, the business for me, from the time we started Hennepin Made to now we have, multiple entities, it's always been in service of those same ideas, right? Like, how do we bring people together? How do we create space, create community, demonstrate transformation, keep the imagination open, stay curious, all those things.
Yeah. And I think watching that evolve, you don't give yourself enough credit here as being you're a savvy entrepreneur. You've just figured it out the right ways. And, you built that business from 2011, working, in a small studio, to now you have a building over off Glenwood, just west of Target Field, and that you bought from Bryn Glass. So that building has been glass since the walls went up. So, what you've got going on over there is pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, we got some drive. We want to create something. Let's go. We want to make it real. And so, from day one, that was kind of the memo to any of the team members, was like, this is we better be having fun, but we better be doing it at the highest level. I'm not interested. Right. And we built the team all around that. It's like, you better bring the energy, and you better do it at a high level. And so, that's our culture. Like, you fit, if you bring it and you do it at a high level, you fit in here. And then if you don't, everybody else is looking around going, what is that person's deal? Like, they aren't going to make it. Right.
Yeah. So before we get into the what you all have going on in that building, talk to me. I have a feeling that this is going to be longer than I have in my brain, but talk to me about the glass blowing process. So you've probably talked about this. You've taught this. Now, remember, our listeners have probably not experienced this. So how would you explain the glass blowing process to someone that knows nothing about your world?
Well, so I think there's two aspects to the glass blowing process that are important to understand for anybody that's never experienced it, right? So there's a sort of science part of it, and then there's the art part of it. And merged between those two, the bridge is sort of the technician, is the glass blower, essentially. And so the science part of it is we take sand. You can't just use any sand. It's got to be a kind of certain purified type that's crushed really finely. We add some fluxes, and fluxes just give it a little bit different viscosity. It makes it more malleable, easier to work. And they bring the melting temperature from 5,000 degrees. Pure sand melts at 5,000 degrees, which is crazy hot, to about 2,000, 2,300 degrees. So it cuts it in half. 2,300 degrees is still crazy hot. Don't get me wrong. But the 5,000 degrees is like a whole nother thing to try to maintain equipment and have something that can operate. So so we take our glass we actually buy from, it's manufactured in Sweden, the raw material, and then we shove it into an electric furnace here on site, and then melts for several days, and then we pull it out of the furnace. So that's sort of the very quick, science part of it. The art part of it is, you have a 5-foot long metal rod that has a hole in the center, your blowpipe, and you get some molten glass on the end of it, and it's like the consistency of honey, right? So you have to keep turning it. And from there, from the time you get that glass on the end of that pipe, it's in its most pure form. And what your job is just to not screw it up. That's your job. So basically,
it's a great way to tee it off, right?
Yeah. So basically, it's like if you don't touch the stuff and you just keep turning it, it'll be in this perfect teardrop round shape. It'll be beautiful. It's not functional for what you need. So you need to kind of work with its memory and its natural properties. You can't try to force it. So there's a real poetry to all that whole process. So if you watch glass blowing videos online or whatever, it looks so fluid. But the other thing, the other part of that art is it's very, very tightly choreographed. You have a vision of exactly what you're going to make from the time you get some glass on the end of that pipe. It's not like wild, crazy adventure. It can be if you're just trying to fully experiment, but to create a repeatable object, it's very like that person is a technician, and the poetry is in their ability to get there. How well can they adapt? How well can they understand when they're forcing something? They need to make slight adjustments. There's a lot of listening. You're listening with your eyes, essentially, like you're watching it and you're kind of being responsive. So it's a really unique process because it's a whole flow thing, and you have several people all working together, and it's magical. It'll never lose its magic ever. And why I love it more than kind of any other process I've ever experienced too, is that it is so pure that I don't think there's anything that can improve the process of it. You bring technology to it, great. It's not going to make it more human, right? You add more people to. There's just nothing you can do. It's so essential, and it's in the flow that you can get, and it's very, very intimate. So that's why I just love it so much. I think it's so special.
And I think one thing that boggles my mind is you show pieces in the glass room that they look relatively close to the same, and there's a lot of them. Like you've got lines of like maybe glass sconces or lighting or things like that look kind of the same. And so for me, it's like hard for me to wrap my head around, like that looks so close to the same thing repeated over and over, but yet every one has got its own little idiosyncrasies, but every single one of those were made by a human being to make it look exactly the same as the other one with some minor differences. To me, it's just that whole, like, it's just, that was a hard thing for me to wrap my head around once I started doing a tour and just understanding the whole process.
Yeah. Yeah. So we say that we don't want to eliminate the evidence of the hand or the maker, but we also want enough consistency that if we ship you 3 pendants, you don't feel like we shipped you 3 different products and we messed up the order. Right? So that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm totally pulling this off the cuff. So if you listen to other podcasts or you talk to people about mastery, people will say that you can master something. And if you do something for 10,000 hours, do you feel that is a representative of what it takes to master being a glass blowing artist?
Yeah, maybe even more, but yeah, that's a good start. You can master it in 10,000 hours if you're incredibly skilled on top of that.
Right.
Like you just have to have some natural affinities. Like, having taught courses and stuff, I hate to say it, but there's people that it doesn't matter how many hours at glass blowing and they're never going to master it. Right. And I think it's the same with a lot of things, but yes, right. That'd be 5 years working full time. that's probably a pretty good start. And then there's a whole spectrum of people that are professionals at that craft that also range, right? Just like professional athletes, right? You have your superstars, and then you have people that can make the team.
Yeah.
And I would say 5 hours is 10,000 hours would be the bare minimum. Our average glassblower has about 12 to 14 years experience. And most of them we hire with about 6 to 7 years experience.
Is there one quality that when you were teaching or when you see someone when they first start out that you're like, okay, this person has got this thing that is going to make them a good, talented glassblower in the future?
Yeah, there's a certain amount of it goes from like curiosity into analytical into technical. Like that would be the set of logic. There's a good portion of people that are just like, it's hot and they freak out, they panic, right?
Right.
And they never can get over that panic. It's like, well, you gotta calm down, or we're like, this is, you're just always going to be stuck, right? And so the people that are really curious and then they're inquisitive, right? So they're like, okay, if I do this, then it means this, and then I can manipulate that like this, right? And so it's kind of that logic, and then hand-eye coordination to be able to just like we use language, like you have to be able to articulate that through hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
So that I would say that's the thing for sure. And typically the best glassblowers they're very calm in that space, right? A lot of times they tend to be highly addictive personalities. It's kind of like chefs or restaurants. You have like people that are really intense, and then that's their outlet to channel that intensity. But they find it really meditative because they're like, oh, I have to be so present that this is all that matters.
Yeah, I would put you in the category of pretty mellow.
Yep.
I don't know if you caught that at the beginning about sharing your level of intensity, but that was a little tongue in cheek about you, pretty mellow dude. I will say to kind of cap that off, like you emulate that, as I've known you over the years, of that being able to leverage your left brain, right brain, so analytical and creative. And that's probably, that same type of mindset that needs to happen in glassblowers, is being able to tap into both sides, which typically most people have a challenging time to do.
Yep.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about all the stuff that you have going on within that building. So you've got Hennepin made, which is the glass blowing and the glass manufacturing part of this. What else is going on inside that building off of Glenwood?
So when we acquired this site, we looked at several areas throughout the city of Minneapolis, and we really liked neighborhoods that we felt like we could have a positive impact on the neighborhood. And we really were wanting to be connected to the neighborhood. So, and when we started our business, we started Hennepin Made, we started a warehouse, and it had like 30 or 40 small businesses in it. So we loved that energy where it was kind of an incubator, and there's just a lot of interesting people. And so when we moved Hennepin Made in here, I really wanted to make sure we had some way to activate the building. And so we ended up opening a cafe, which was formerly called Parallel. We're rebranding the whole building as the Glass House. So it'll be Glass House Cafe and Glass House Events. And then we opened up an event space attached to that. And that we consider like our living room, right? It's the place where we can host people. We have them, come in and hang out, and we can make connection and build relationships. And so we opened that in 2018. And that was a pretty steep learning curve for me, for sure. A pretty humbling experience in many ways. So we also use it as a place to display our work. So there's lighting throughout both those spaces, and we just built out one of the rooms as Hennepin Made showroom that's sort of nestled in the cafe. And so the idea is that there's a public face that kind of represents the aesthetics and the energy that we're about. And that's the front of house, that public space. And then there's sort of back of house where we can just get, roll up our sleeves and do the work we love to do.
Yeah. Yeah. What was humbling about that?
I just moved a lot faster than, I probably should have. Well, not probably, then I should have. You have really good team members that ultimately drive, the success of the organization and your success. They hold you up.
Yep.
And so that's the way I saw it, is they hold me up, which they do. But then I when you move fast, it starts to become more about what your vision is and not what our vision is. You have really talented people that can get really frustrated, and your culture starts to degrade and fall apart, or show some cracks. So I had to do a reset. I had to be honest with myself first, then you can be honest with your teammates, and through that process, then switching it. It's not about me. It's about us. And so now I have to make sure I'm holding them up, right? So if you have sort of the hierarchy is the pyramid, right? And then we flip that around. That's
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
that's the right way it works, right?
Yeah.
That's how you get
Yeah.
people to do their best work, and just empower them, right? So it just that whole process was a year and a half of making mistakes and not listening, and then finally it comes to a point where you go, oh, I'm the problem. I'm the one like creating all this all these issues or challenges that really talented people are having, and I'm in the way. And so I can either reset and figure out how to support them, or I can get out of the way and leave. Those are your two options, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to leave, so I had to change.
Right.
But it all started with being honest. I got rounded up a bunch of people in the room and said, here's what I know, and I apologize, and I'm not going to operate this way in the future. And I'd like to write down everything else I don't know. So if you could start sharing that with me, let's do that. Nobody said a peep, right? So then I started calling on people and saying, well, so and so, I think that when I do this, it really annoys you. And they were like, then everybody started loosening up, laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it then it started going, right? And that was like floodgates opened up, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got it all out. You have to get it all
good.
out, write it all down, and go, okay, what do we like? What don't we like? How are we going to move forward together? And then you set the ship on a certain course, and it sort of lets everybody know this is the direction we're headed. Everybody's on board. Now's your time to say, this isn't for me, right? And from there, we've been incredibly successful. We've had great success with the businesses. We've had and consistently improving and maturing culture, and we still have our challenges, but we're able to work through them, I think, in a really positive way. So having success and having mastery in one thing doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're going to have mastery in another thing. And so
right.
I think opening up that business, I just thought, I've learned so much in doing this other thing. I'll be able to translate that one for one. Well, it didn't work that way.
Right. That's a valuable lesson in leadership, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Probably expensive lesson in leadership too.
Yep.
We're not going to dig into that. So what does the future hold for Hennepin Made and what you're building there?
So for Hennepin Made, we're in the very beginning of developing a national sales team. So we took the model. Our industry has a kind of a unique model because you work with designers who you consider your clients, but they aren't the people buying the product typically. Some are, but for the most part they aren't. And so there's then purchasing agents, and then the owners or users that end up buying the product. So there's these rep agencies, and that will sell multiple lines and specialize in architecture and design industry. And we've tried that. We out of a dozen of them, we have a couple that are really good, and the rest don't really do much. But 85% of our sales are accounted for by our national sales manager and myself, which is two people, and I'm only working on sales probably now like 10% of the time. So
right.
That became really evident over the last 2 years that okay, this model isn't scalable with these independent reps, and we need to start hiring employees. So we're really on the I think the front edge of starting to scale pretty dramatically, and we'll start adding key market reps and key employees in major markets. And then expanding the product collection substantially. We'll probably double the sort of product offerings over the next 18 months. So the company will really look very different in 2 years compared to where it is today. So that's awesome. That's going to be a very exciting thing. The scale we need to basically double it to be at the scale where we can provide enough opportunity for all the people in the organization. Over the right trajectory. So we need to double it in the next couple of years, which I think all the things are there to do that. So that's super, super exciting. And then with the building, we're reopening the cafe as Glass House Cafe in the next 1 to 2 months, and rebranding the whole building. We're starting an artist in residency program. So we have a photographer and this Black art collective called the Bureau that is going to be our first resident,
Cool.
artist in residence. And we'll commission artworks and do projects, and we'll start taking on a lot more of our own programming. So dinner events, panel discussions, art shows, music shows. We're starting a market on Sundays, an indoor market. Minneapolis doesn't have an indoor market, and the farmers market's right down the street. And so we see the opportunity and the need to really figure out how to extend that farmers market through the winter months of a version of it. So it'll be a food market to celebrate all the diverse cultures we have in Minneapolis. And so the concept of Glass House is it really becomes sort of this cultural catalyst and cultural hub, where it's art, design, craft, food. And so that's a really exciting thing. And that really brings, I think, the two businesses together a lot better, has the potential to.
Yeah, I love it. Oh man, I'm so excited to see where you're going to take this thing. And I always love coming there, and that's my favorite coffee shop in the Twin Cities. I've seen you way too many times there. I didn't even bother you half the time. You were over in meetings and stuff like that, but I just like hanging out there. So I'm glad it's going to be opening up again here in a month or two.
Yep. Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, good. All right, we're going to transition into 9 questions, buddy. All right, so can you confirm that you have no idea what I'm about to ask you?
I have no idea.
All right, are you scared shitless?
No.
All right, good. You're too
We'll
calm for
find our
that.
way.
All right.
We'll find our way.
All right, yeah, we will. All right, I'm going to tee it up with something easy. What was your first concert?
First concert was the Allman Brothers Band.
Yeah, for some reason that doesn't surprise me. Something
Yep.
in that genre, right?
Yep. Southern rock.
Yeah.
I loved it. It's great.
Yeah. What is your favorite smell?
Oh, favorite smell. My favorite smell is Rainy Lake. I know that's kind of sounds weird, but like when you're standing there, it's like you got all the rock, you have the water, and you have the trees. There's just a really unique smell. You know you've arrived.
I actually know exactly what you're talking about up there. Yeah, I go up there once a year in the fall, and I know that smell. It's a little different, just maybe because of the body of water.
Yep.
Yeah. What is your superpower?
I think it's connecting with people. I think I have an ability to really connect with people, and on a really wide range of people. I can kind of play that role of bridge builder for sure.
Yeah. I would classify you as a chameleon. Yeah. What is your go-to for inspiration?
Go-to for inspiration is being outdoors, wilderness for sure.
Yeah. Is that my next question is, what do you do to keep yourself grounded? Would it be something outdoors as well?
Yeah, being in wilderness, and not just outdoors. I'll say wilderness. I think like wilderness is like becoming more scarce, right?
Yeah.
As we have more needs for, materials and resources and all that stuff. So there's just something unique about the wilderness that's regenerative for me as far as energy, for sure.
I'm a fly fisherman. You're a good fly fisherman. You and I still need to figure that out one of these days, is getting out for a half day. We've talked about it for years, but I think we just need to make it happen.
We need to make it happen. This summer we've been a little bit handicapped because it's been 90+ degrees every day.
Right. Yeah. That's all the more reason to get down by a stream that's cool and right. Get out of that heat, out of the sun. Yep. What is one thing that most people would not know about you?
I was a really I played really competitive hockey growing up. Most people wouldn't know that.
Really?
And so I'm like, yeah, I was a really competitive hockey player up until I completed high school.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yep. That's fascinating.
You got to channel that energy somewhere. So it was sports. I was really into sports, hockey specifically. And then once I found glass, I was like, hockey was out the window, basically.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. I'm glad I found that out today. What is one piece of advice that you always go back to?
I think, I've had some really great mentors along the way. And I think what's consistent is with people that I really look up to is that they understand the flow, right? You got to push hard when you push hard, and you got to have patience. Like if you feel like it's not the moment, it's something's not working, you got to back off. Like I'm always like, why? Like you feel the stress levels go up, you feel tension go up, kind of like, what is causing this? I'm cramming too much stuff in, I'm pushing too hard, I'm trying to force things. So I typically always go back to that when I'm feeling really like out of control or stuff's kind of like not working right. It's okay. Wrong time, wrong focus. Like, what is it? I'm pushing on something. So it's kind of pulling back on that and being patient when you need to be patient, and also like hitting the gas pedal when you really need to hit the gas pedal.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your biggest pet peeve?
My biggest pet peeve is when people don't try, when they're capable and they don't try. It is one of those things that I just am like, your capacity is so much more than what you're putting forth. And so I think that is huge for me. Just try, show up, push yourself, use the skills that you have. Just try.
Yeah. Right.
Well,
you're not the first person on this podcast that said that. And I think that drives a lot of people crazy. But I think knowing your drive and the way that you're wired, that doesn't surprise me at all. All right. Last one. How would you define happiness?
I think happiness is really based on quality of life. And so if you're going to define quality of life, I mean, that's different for each person. For me, it's about, what are the things I enjoy and how much time am I spending doing them, right? I love being part of an organization. It's awesome. I get to spend a huge chunk of my time doing that. I also get to spend a huge chunk of my time enjoying my family relationships, being in the outdoors, taking adventures, cooking amazing meals. So I think it's what are the combination of things that give you the highest level of enjoyment, and what portion of your time is doing those things. To me, that is the definition. That's the recipe.
I like it. You survived, man. Great answer
right,
for that one. You answered that like you practiced that one. So I was impressed with how fast you pulled that one out. Nice work.
Yeah. Well, I think like what I'll say as a sort of anecdote to that is, living through a pandemic, right? You really go like, what matters, right? Like you're like stuck. The first part of that first couple of months, you were literally like in your house.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and so you go through like, okay, what actually makes me happy? What do I need in my life, right? And it isn't just about, objects or material things. And it's not just about, well, I need my partner or my wife or, my family. Like, yeah, you need those things. But then what's the set of things that really get you there?
Yeah.
And so I thought a lot about that because, we've been at this for 10 years, and that was a very stressful situation for a lot of people, myself included. And it was like, is this worth doing anymore? You just kind of, and you need those moments to go, it's like, is this all still worth doing? And then, you have that moment for about 2 minutes, you go, yeah, it's totally worth doing. So
yeah, gut check moment.
Yeah. And then you keep going. And so I think, I imagine a lot of us have thought, really deeply about that over the last year and a half. What makes me happy? What do I like doing?
Yeah, agreed. All right, man. Where can people find you?
You can find us at hennepinmade.com. That's all of our, glass world. Glasshousemn.com is the whole building and cafe and events world. You can email me directly, jackson@hennepinmade.com. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Shoot me a note. I'm very approachable. In about 6 weeks, hopefully you can walk into the cafe and probably see me a lot of the time too.
Yeah. And I think you guys do a pretty good job. Do you know your Instagram handle off the top of your hand?
Yeah, it's just Hennepin Made.
Okay. You do a good job. I follow you. I don't spend a ton of time on Instagram, but I do follow Hennepin Made on there, and it shows a great representation of your products and the creation process and things like that. You guys do a good job with that part of your social media as well.
Yep, we're pretty active there.
All that stuff is going to be in the show notes. So if people want links to it and you don't want to have to write that down, go to the show notes and check it out. Brother, I'm so happy to have you as a member of our community. I'm super happy to have you on this podcast. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and the glass blowing process and everything with everybody, all of our listeners.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great. I love conversing and appreciate all the things you're pulling together, Aaron.
Oh yeah, man. Appreciate it. So on behalf of Jackson Schwartz, this has been the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert, and I want to thank you for the privilege of your time.